This is Wisconsin's Morning News. Here's your host, Vince Vitrano.
Coming up on 6:12, still no good answers this morning on how a crash involving the motorcade for the Democrats' vice presidential nominee, Governor Tim Walz, happened on an expressway here in Milwaukee. Governor Walz was not injured. His vehicle was not involved in what's described as a chain reaction crash involving multiple other vehicles. This would be like the Lake Expressway, 794, as they were headed to the nominees event on the Summerfest grounds here in Milwaukee. Multiple people did end up in the hospital, though life-threatening injuries were reported, mostly bumps and bruises. ABC News national correspondent Steven Portnoy is live with us from Washington. And Steven, since it's the U.S. Secret Service that coordinates all this, local law enforcement has not had a lot to say about how this happened.
The Secret Service, I think, did put out a statement that indicated that the most important part of it from the Secret Service's standpoint is the protectee was not involved. That is to say, Governor Tim Walz was well ahead of the vehicles that were involved in this chain reaction crash. Let me tell you, as someone who has spent much of his career in motorcades,
Yes.
The lead car is the most important component of any motorcade. The rest of us who are far behind are less important to the officials who are organizing it. And my experience has been, I don't know what happened yesterday, but my experience has been, particularly with campaign candidate travel, is that vans are driven not by anyone in government or law enforcement, but the vans themselves, particularly the ones holding press and staff in the back, are driven by campaign volunteers who may have a limited amount of training. And it is an honor and a neat thing to do to be asked to drive in a motorcade because you are whisked away with police escort at high speeds on cleared freeways. And it often happens, frankly, that there are accidents. Sometimes these accidents involve law enforcement, motorcyclists, for example, that is to say police officers on motorcycles. But rarely do you see a circumstance like we saw yesterday where the vans are in close proximity to one another, not a lot of following distance. Somebody stops short, and then you get bang, bang, bang. And that's what happened yesterday. At least 3 vans were involved in this. And because of the nature of campaign candidate travel, where everyone's in these passenger vans, you have to load quickly, hop off quickly. Your job when you're in these motorcades, particularly as reporters, is to chase the candidate. You want to be in position so you can get his movements as he's interacting with the public, particularly the photographers. That's their objective. That's their assignment. And so oftentimes seatbelts are not worn. So yesterday, on board one of these vans, there were multiple minor injuries. None of them were life-threatening. A couple people had to be hospitalized. One staffer for the Harris campaign was believed to have a broken arm. There was a reporter with a bloody nose, but in the main, everybody wound up shaking it off. There was one woman reporter who was believed to have a concussion. She too shook it off and continued on with her job duties all through yesterday. The governor was called by Vice President Harris and President Biden just to check in, and the governor made a pit stop at Milwaukee Campus Children's, Wisconsin, in, I'm going to probably not apologize to the town, Wauwatosa? Is that
Beautiful.
how you pronounce it?
Well done.
Thank you very much. And so he stopped by there to check in on the staff that was injured.
So really quick, Steven, you mentioned the bang, bang, bang of the vans being in close proximity. Does it sound like no outside vehicles were involved in this?
I'm not aware of any outside vehicles. I've only seen photographs of the vehicles that were involved. You would describe it as minor fender bender damage. Certainly some serious body work has to be done to these vehicles before they're put back into service. But nothing I didn't see anything was totaled. I also did not see any outside vehicle, but there was one suspicion, and again, no official confirmation of this, but what may have caused the vehicles behind Governor Walz's car to stop short was the appearance of or intrusion of another vehicle not involved with the motorcade that probably shouldn't have been on the roadway or near it. Again, no information to substantiate that other than the idea that as the reporters were making their way to other vans, they did see a car that wasn't supposed to be there.
Steven Portnoy, ABC News national correspondent. Not how Milwaukee wanted to make the Labor Day campaign news, Steven, but here we are.
Well, glad everybody wasn't
Yes.
hurt worse. I mean, like I said, I'm aware of accidents like this happening in motorcades. This is probably the most severe incident I've ever seen.
Thanks for the time, Steven.
You bet.
He mentioned he's been in far more than you or I, but you've been in one of those motorcades, right? Mm-hmm. So the biggest one I was in was when then Vice President Gore was running for president, and it was, they treat the president or presidential candidates differently than they do say, Governor Walz in this situation. But you heard Steven reference, regular traffic was still on 794 there. Typically, when it's the president, they shut it all down so you don't have any possible intrusions.
Right, and I remember, every single time, as Milwaukee has been a city at the forefront of a lot of these visits, we always hear as part of the news cycle, this is going to be shut down, this is now shut down. Right. So hearing that was kind of an eyebrow raiser.
So glad for the most part everybody is okay, no life-threatening injuries, but still not how Milwaukee wanted to make the Labor Day campaign news.
Not really.